I am being joined today by a master storyteller, none other than Dr. Finesse. What is up, my friend?
How you doing?
Welcome to the show. Good to see you. Super excited about this, and as I was just saying, the preparation for this was a lot of fun because in going back, so we're going to be focusing on 80s movies, which you and I grew up in the 80s, and so going back and seeing some of the things that really impacted me and sort of beginning to realize how much of my worldview has slowly been being put in place by these things was a lot of fun. So we're going to share some clips. Did you pull clips or stills?
I actually pulled stills.
Okay, I pulled actual
clips.
Pulled
clips. Yeah,
which may or may not be good. We'll learn. If the clips are too long and feel like they're dragging out, then we'll just put up a still image and go from there.
I think it's a good shakeup to have clips, images, us. Yeah, it's a variety, so I think we're good.
All right, so to finish my thought, so the whole point of the studio side of impact theory is to create content that at its core, the themes that it deals with, the characters that you look up to, that you aspire to, they have a certain belief system. And I believe that that's where much of the cultural belief system begins to take root, is in the pop culture, all the things that we aspire to, the people that we elevate, the people that we look up to. So I want to bake into that and believe that by baking into that, we can influence the sort of cultural subconscious, if you will, which then goes out to be part of the belief system that people build for themselves. And these are going to be things that you'll see, I would assume from you, certainly from me, things that played a key role in my development.
Most definitely.
And this will be really the things that we're doing moving forward. We've got 3 segments of Impact Entertainment today, which is a teaser, not the physical format, because we're building out a whole set for this, but giving you guys a sense of the way that we'll be engaging with content to build that audience that'll really understand what we're doing, so that when we do start releasing traditional narrative content, books, comic books, movies, TV shows, video games, longer term on video games, that audience will already be built into our community. All right, so our giveaway today is an 80s movie basket, and the sad face is because this is US only. US only, because this is one that would have to be mailed, but technically wouldn't Young and Reckless also be, because it has to be mailed. Anyway, we'll worry about that later. But the 80s movie basket, unfortunately, is US only because of horrific international shipping costs. But there are certain things that are going to be open to everybody. So, all right, and we'll announce the question later, what the question is going to be. Why don't you kick us off, Christopher? What is the first movie that you want to talk about?
You know, I'm going to start with, and I don't know if you notice, I never wear printed T-shirts, as you know.
You know what's weird? It hit me funny. It seemed different, but I never would have said you never wear them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's almost next to never. When we had that Star Wars celebration, I wore the disco ball Death Star.
Yes, you did.
But other than that, I just don't. I mean, I have nothing against it. I just don't wear them. So, but I'm making an exception today. And if you notice what that says,
Miyagi-Do Karate.
Yes, yes, the Miyagi-Do Dojo. So those of you who don't know, this is from The Karate Kid.
And we should clarify, you and I did not know the movies the other person was going to pull.
No, this is going to be a complete surprise to the two of us. So, and I can't tell you enough. I can't wait to hear what your movies are. And I'm sure there's going to be some type of overlapping, maybe not.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Exactly. But yes, The Karate Kid, man, let me tell you, I'll begin by saying this movie set the stage for my love of going to movies.
Really?
Like, yeah, I was already going to movies by the time The Karate Kid came out in 1984. But I'm the youngest of 3 brothers. And I have an oldest brother who is 5 years older than me. And I have an Irish twin, so to speak, who's 1.5 years older than me. And the two of us did everything together. My oldest brother, he was big for his age, so he always got to go out beyond his years. And I remember he'd gone to see The Karate Kid out with some friends, and he came back and he's like, "Oh my God, you guys got to see this movie!" And he dictated everything that happened in that movie. And my brother and I, Gavin, the other brother, we could not wait to go see this movie. And by the time we saw it, it was exactly how he said it was going to be. And we were just beyond in love with the film. And this film, because my brother set the stage of his experience, it became like popcorn, so to speak, that adventure of going to the movies and having popcorn and having candy and having soda. And I'll never forget it. That was the beginning of the full movie going experience for me, was this movie. Now, this movie, how it impacted me, got a number of reasons. I mean, we can break it down, and I know you could break it down. the object of rising above the bully, rising above the naysayers, and just pushing yourself. And, Daniel-san here meets Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi shows him the way of karate, but he also...
Karate!
But he had to do... I mean, he learned some lessons along the way. And we all know the wax on and wax off, the floor when he's waxing the floor. He learned some lessons. But to me, it was rising above and overcoming your fear. And that set the stage for me right away in my life. I was like, okay, well, if Daniel-san could overcome his fear when he's being bullied by like 6 or 7 Cobra Kai guys, then I can overcome my fear. And I could imagine that movie had an effect on you too. I mean, if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, so I did. This is also one that I pulled. In fact, if we can bring up the clip that I pulled from this movie, which is interesting. We had the entire decade of the 80s, and so it's really interesting to me. And I'm curious to see if we have more than one movie that overlap.
I know.
Because this is my fucking point. If you intentionally set out to make a movie like this, it's really possible. This movie has echoed through my life in a way that I can't tell you, to the point where not only did I go get, the headband and a book after book on karate, and then practice in my front yard with my friends. So it became like so important to me, this notion of martial arts. Now, I'm sad that I was a kid that had a fixed mindset, and so I didn't go like officially train because I didn't want to look stupid or get hurt. But this planted a seed that it's like terrifying to think how much more entrenched in a fixed mindset would I have been without things like this that really do become those anchor points that later echo into a larger world. And if I had had an adult that could have echoed something like this back and told me, like, you can take this movie, these are the lessons that you should learn from it, and really help me see, because my idea behind doing Impact Entertainment is to show people. By the way, we need a better name for that, so put names. It's going to be things like this where we're showing clips, talking about what you can learn in real life. If you have ideas for the name, we'd be all open to that. We're on a time clock, so the sooner the better. That if you had, somebody that was really showing you how to extract the value, that wasn't brushing it off as just entertainment, that you could really get some momentum.
I'm beating you goddamn slaves when I'm beating, man. We made a deal here. So you're supposed to teach and I'm supposed to learn, remember? For 4 days I've been busting my ass. I haven't learned a goddamn thing.
You learned plenty.
I learned plenty. I learned how to sand your decks, maybe. I wax your car, paint your house, paint your fence. I learned plenty, right?
Not everything is as seems.
Oh, bullshit. I'm going home, man.
Daniel-san! Daniel-san!
What?
Come here. Show me sand the floor.
I can't move my arm, all right? What are you doing? Ow! Ow, what are you doing?
Now show me sand the floor.
How did you do that?
Shut up!
Sand the floor.
Hey, stand up. Show me sand the floor. Sand the floor. Sand the floor. Big sucker, sand the floor. Sand the floor. Yes. Now show me wax on, wax off. Hey.
Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off. Hey, wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Concentrate. Look at my eye. Lock a hand. Thumb inside. Wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Wax on, hot. Wax off, hot. Wax on. Wax off. Ush. Show me paint the fence. Up, down. Up, down, up, down. Other side. Look eye. Always look eye. Show me paint the house. Side, side. Lock wrist. Side, side. Side, side. Yes. Show me wax on, wax off. Show me paint the fence. Yes! 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 Show me side to side. Yes! 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 Show me sand or floor. Yes! 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 Oi. And look I. Always look I. Come back tomorrow.
That pan flute, man. I love that pan flute.
All right, we can kill the clip there. All right, so that, even while we were watching it there, it makes me emotional.
Got me too.
And when things make you emotional, it primes you to remember it.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea, and this is a real story. We actually got this on video. I'd have to see if I ever, if I could find a copy of it. But when we started Quest, we had to buy all this equipment. And the truck backs up. We rented this, or not rented. Yeah, we rent, but leased, long-term leased. This facility. The equipment's backing up. Door drops down. And we realize nobody knows how to drive a forklift. Except me. And I was like, actually, guys, I know how to drive a forklift. I'm literally a certified forklift driver, or I was. I'm sure it lapses after a period of time. And I thought everyone was like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And then I was like, oh my God, wax on, wax off. And so I get into the forklift and I pull out and I start pulling the equipment off the truck and I look at the camera and I go, because my dad always made us work, right? We always had to have these stupid jobs during the summer and I hated them so much. And my dad always told me, like, you know, this stuff's going to be useful one day. If nothing else, it's going to teach you that you want to go to college and not do manual labor. And I look at the camera and I say, wax on, wax off. Because that's how this stuff sticks with you, dude. That was like 30 years after I'd seen the movie. And in that moment, I realized acquiring skills, man. Acquire skills. There's this awesome quote, when you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything. When you know the way broadly, you'll see it in everything. When you're trained in all this different stuff, when you have broad knowledge, all of a sudden you find these answers everywhere because there is a path, because you have so much knowledge. I got a fucking movie about a kid in the valley, right, learning karate, but it's thoughtful. It's thoughtful entertainment. And this is where this movie is purely entertaining, right? Yeah. Millions of people have seen this. They don't necessarily go deep. So they can watch the movie on the surface if they want to, because this is where people always go with where we're headed with impact theory. That, oh, are people really going to get that? I don't give a fuck. Like, if it's entertaining and it's there for the people that want to take it, and it's there for the people that want to show up and watch our content, and it's there for the people that are out there creating social content right now that need great movies, that need great entertainment to fuel their pipeline, to say cool shit about the world and what you can learn. Did you know that Forbes did a whole video series on what you can learn about leadership from Game of Thrones?
No, I did not know that.
So, I mean, it is there, man. It is there. But people aren't creating the entertainment that's thoughtful enough for there to be anything to talk about. Now, that's not universal. There's some great things. We're going to be talking later today about Game of Thrones. We're going to show some amazing movies that did it. But it's not a surprise that at least this one overlaps. I think there was one that I think I ended up leaving out. I can't remember now if it made it or not, because I heard you talk about something and I thought, just in case he's talking about that because it's one of his movies, I'll stay away from it. But the fact that we came in on the same movies tells you there were people that just figured it out, right? Oh, yeah. The way to get you emotionally, make you feel empowered, and you walked away feeling a certain way. And that's my whole thing about Disney. Disney made you feel the magic of childhood, that the most magical place on earth. They captured that nostalgia for a better time and how you felt as a kid. They just nailed that. And so when you walked away from one of their pieces of entertainment, you felt good. There was that hope, that optimism. I think there's now an entire universe like that to be created about empowerment. And I actually the other day was thinking in one of my like obsessive phases about how we build this, where we go. And I was thinking, I don't think we would ever do an impact world, but it would be the most empowering place on earth. And it fucking rings the same way, right? Where you're like, yes, I want to feel that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the magic of this for me. That moment is real. That moment of you're learning something and you don't understand why you're learning it, but learning and training will come together.
And I mean, and it's funny, just a little sidebar on that scene, and I'm sure this happened to every kid. I remember going home with my brother and being like, just punch me. He's like, what? Try to punch me. And I was going to try the wax on and wax off thing on him. And I tried to go up and get him. And he just came under and punched me in the face. And I was just like, oh my God. And it didn't quite work. But hey, it still stuck with me. Right. And I remember thinking, I mean, just that look on his face when he realizes, wow, I just learned something.
Right.
There was a lesson here and everything. And one element, before we move on to the next movie that I wanted to mention, that a lot of people forget to talk about or haven't talked about when they talk about this movie. They talk about him being the underdog, being bullied by Cobra Kai, because that's obvious. It was on the surface. But if you really look at the movie, and I'm sure you've realized this also, Daniel is a jerk. he really is a jerk. Like from the beginning, you're like, God, this kid's a jerk. Like he's mean to his mom. He's like, come on, Mom, I don't want to take off my glasses. And he's just pissed off at her all the time. She's like, let me see your baby brown. Leave me alone, Mom. Come on, Mom. And then, so we all think Cobra Kai is the jerk. But Daniel is the jerk also. He picks the fight, sort of, at the beach in the beginning, where he gets his butt kicked. Even when he's moved on from being bullied, he's at the party and Cobra Kai's in their skeleton outfit. And what does he do? He takes a hose and puts it on over the Cobra Kai guys, over Johnny, and sprays him and gets him wet. Yeah, he gets his butt kicked, but that's when Mr. Miyagi gets to jump in and save him. He punches the guy, he sucker punches the guy on the field, who kind of slide tackles him or trips him when he's playing soccer. But Daniel throws the first punch. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think that was intentional. I think it's something that most people overlooked because he did learn a lesson other than learning karate and learning how to overcome his fear. He learned discipline from Mr. Miyagi and how to control his temper and just how to control his emotions. And that's one thing that I got from the film because, I mean, he was this kid from Jersey. And I think it was hard for people to notice that because, not to say that Ralph Macchio is a weak kid, but he kind of has this like, this whole nice nature, this very calm demeanor. But yeah, he kind of was a jerk. So he also gained the discipline from Mr. Miyagi.
That's actually a really good point. That's a recurring theme with martial arts film is to find your humility, to find the, in fact, I don't want to give too much away, but I'll stop myself there. There's another clip that we'll get into later that will remind me, and we'll come back around to this because it is very on theme for that. All right, we have a fan question here. So Angela Monette Smith, this movie is the epitome of someone believing in you more than you believe in yourself. How impactful is that? Agreed. So comment more than a question. Rosabelle Capasso, loving the expressions on their faces, so enthralled after all these years. That's actually a really interesting point. So when I was watching the clip and I was going back and looking for clips, one thing that really struck me is the filmmakers took this film seriously. Yeah. And even if it was never intended to elevate to the form of art, they take it seriously enough that it gets there. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's remembered. And one of the things that I'll want to be a hallmark of the stuff that we put out is that we take it seriously. And no matter what your material is, if you take it seriously and treat it like it's art, you can really do something exceptional. Do you know the stories behind Risky Business?
Behind the filmmaking of it?
Yeah.
I think I did kind of know at one point, but I don't know now.
So this always intrigued me. It's very similar to what happened with Star Wars. So with Star Wars, everyone's like, this is stupid. It's a kid's film, but he took it seriously. It gets elevated to art. People were walking off the film saying, this is like crap. It's the cinematographer quit. I mean, it's just people were really, you need to eat your mic a little bit more. People were really convinced that it was going to be terrible. Okay. Same with Risky Business. So actually a little bit different. So he was shooting it like a European art house film back in the 80s, which was like unheard of for a US blockbuster, or not necessarily a blockbuster, but for a big US film. And so same thing, cinematographer walks off the film, is like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This is crazy the way he's setting it. but it's remembered because he took it so seriously. He was like, I'm not going to do your typical teen comedy. I really want there to be a cinematic quality to this. And so if we can do that, so that these escape the fate of like becoming cheesy or trite, they need to be layered. They need to be interesting. You need to, like you're pointing out with Ralph Macchio, you need to deal with the other layers of emotion. It's not the perfectly good kid who learns karate. It's not the perfect bully versus good guy. Like, life isn't like that. So how can you be more nuanced? How can you really give people insights like the 80-20 rule, right?
Yep.
It's not just always be good, always focus on the bright and the positive. There's a reality to be faced in the usefulness of the dark side. And how do you tell a nuanced story like that? So that'll be our challenge, because I think one of the things that served Disney was it's very black and white. It's very good and very bad. So we'll have to be really thoughtful. All right, we have another fan question here from Carrie Gormley. Tom, is your long-term plan with entertainment to include children's preteen books? So I talked about this on Joe Rogan. So he was heckling me a little bit and basically saying, like, you really think you can impact adults with this? And I asked him, like, do you think this will only work for kids? Because I actually have a fear that that's who it'll most impact. And I'll be very curious to see, can we reach adults? Or is this going to be my Jeffrey Canada realization where you have to give up on adults? I don't want to. And I think this will be, like, in fact, going back to talking to Drama in the last segment about, you know, how true do you have to stay to a brand's mission? Like, when can you go off? And I think you have to stay true to the mission, but the path is sort of irrelevant. And let's say, for instance, that we're putting out this content and 1% of the adults that watch it are impacted the way that we want. The other 99% are just going to buy it. But it's wildly successful entertainment. I would keep doing it because that's an example of it's still on brand. It's still doing what I want it to do. It's just not hitting the scale that I want. Now, I would start leveraging the financial success of that to find other ways that we can actually pull more people out of the matrix. But in business, you've got to move from strength to strength.
Yeah.
So if we had something that was winning in one way and I felt good about what the content said, but it wasn't necessarily pulling as many people out as we wanted, I would keep doing that. So that's pretty interesting. But yes, I think children's stuff is the one thing that I know is a guaranteed, because I think they're a much easier, based on where their brain is in the development cycle, based on where their belief system is in the development cycle, I think they're much easier to impact. So they're a for sure.
All right. I'm curious to know what your next movie is.
So, well, my next one, why don't we pull up the one that I was going to allude to anyway? Can you pull up No Retreat, No Surrender?
What?
Yes.
No Retreat, No Surrender, man. That's a movie I haven't thought of in years.
I asked you. Sensei Lee?
Lee, that girl you call me. Shall we begin?
Begin? Begin what?
Your training. You asked me to help.
I'm ready. I've studied a little.
And?
And I haven't been the best of students.
I know you can do better. Utilize what's up here as your way. That's how you win. Come over here. This. It's your beginning. You must be like Wushu. We call it martial arts. The character Wu is made up of Huo, which means violence or force, plus this character Ji, meaning stop. We practice how to stop violence. What you learn from me is for defense only and should not be misused. That's the idea. It's your move. You don't want to listen then? Bye.
I don't wish revenge. I only want to learn.
You, MT. The cup first.
Pardon?
This cup, as you, represents your knowledge. this cup is what I offer. The cup of my knowledge is more than your cup holds.
No need to go.
Then, the cup now is clean, you understand?
Yes.
How? Get in the stance. Punch and power punch. No. This hand, no power. Now, hit here. Stand up. What was the mistake?
Punch wasn't fast enough? Easy to defend against?
Are you asking or telling me? Now, say that to me again.
Not fast enough. Easy to defend against.
How? Show me where to improve it.
Show you?
Listen to the warrior inside. Move and I'll counter. Thing of your technique is straight. Now my technique is a long move. See which is first. Again. Up. Know why you've been getting hit?
No, Lidiga.
You lead with the shoulder. And when your shoulder moves, I see it. You be quick and direct, utilizing chi. The result is power.
All right, you can stop the clip.
Chi.
All right, so the reason that I put that movie in is that despite its atrocious quality from a filmic standpoint, it's really about philosophy. And there's actually some really deep stuff if you start really listening to what they're saying. So the first part is the definition of martial arts as being to stop violence. So the breakdown of the actual Chinese characters for violence and stop. And going back to your point about the Karate Kid, where it was that, right? Daniel learning to control his emotions, Daniel learning to not start the fight.
Oh, yeah.
And really finding ways to control that, to channel that energy into a useful fashion was something that, and I'm surprised, like this, I would have been young when I saw this, and it really, really resonated with me.
Man, you know, it's funny because we had talked about this before. If you were a boy in the 80s, you loved martial arts films. You loved ninja films. Anything of the sort, Chuck Norris films, whatever. And I think the industry knew that. They were clearly aware. If you watch or look back at any of the 80s, like a lineup of films that came out, especially the action films, I would safely say most of the action films, if they weren't some type of war film, obviously, it was a ninja, a karate film, whether it was mainstream or underground. But they all had those themes, even though it was just pure adrenaline and entertainment. If you really paid attention, they all had those themes that you mentioned. Every single one of them. And you even alluded to it earlier, that it was always about that character learning discipline and having a lesson. And I think it introduced a whole big generation of folks in the martial arts. Because, of course, the 70s had the Bruce Lee films, and the 70s had the blaxploitation films, which it just so happened that a dude in Harlem knew martial arts, which I loved, which is amazing. But I think it's safe to say that in the 80s, so many people took up karate because of all the films that Hollywood was spitting out that had ninja and martial arts themes and the theme of overcoming fear and and gaining discipline. I actually, when Karate Kid came out, it came out in '84. And I ended up moving towards the end of the year in '84 to Japan. I'd already lived in Japan for 3 years, and I was living there an additional 3 years when I moved there. And I remember I took karate, very short-lived. I took karate, And I remember the sensei there was Japanese, and there were a couple other guys, adults in the class who were Japanese, and they took it obviously very seriously, and I didn't have the discipline for it. And I kind of look back and wish I didn't drop out, but I just got my butt kicked every day. But I clearly at the time wasn't primed for that discipline, but I got there eventually.
Yeah, what's interesting is, so you watch these movies and they then have an in real life correlate for you. The same is true for me. So I was obsessed with Steven Seagal movies. Obsessed. And when I moved to LA, finally there were Aikido classes, which was his thing about martial arts. And it's interesting because, so what I loved about that clip, and it stayed with me all these years, was that whole it's violence and stop put together, right? And that martial arts is really about standing up for yourself. I think we maybe turned that down a smidge. And I really resonated with that. And the thing about Aikido is it's about using your opponent's aggression against them. So it was never about starting something. And that was something I loved, like with, I think the character's name is Nico Toscani, if I remember right.
Oh my
From
God.
the Steven Seagal movie, was it Above the Law?
Above the Law.
And he does this thing where he's like breaking up a robbery, which, man, in those movies is like always the most ridiculous setup to get him in these like crazy fights.
Yes.
But there was a one in like the grocery store or whatever, and the guy's like, I'm gonna cut your heart out, man. And he gets on his knees and he's like, come on, cut my heart out, right? It was so awesome. And then he just dismantles these guys, but he always puts himself in like a weakened position and then uses their aggression against them. And I loved that because I was not a kid that just wanted to fight. I wasn't that kid.
Oh, yeah, I was
like there are some kids that like they loved fighting. I didn't.
Yeah.
So being in a position where you could defend yourself if somebody like came and attacked you, that really appealed to me. And so then I started taking Aikido lessons, and the catch was, man, like you, I tried some of it in real life and it never worked. And because I'd be like, oh, let me show you this wrist lock. And they would just like pull out of it. And I'm like, wait a second.
I had to pull out of that.
In class, like, it's impossible. So
because you would grab your sensei and he would just flip himself.
Right,
You're like, yeah, I'm strong. But
exactly.
You know.
So that's what's fascinated me about the MMA movement, because that shit has to be real.
Oh, yeah.
So there certainly is like a real corollary at the end of that rainbow. There is a training style that really works. Unfortunately, I didn't find it. And like you at the time, I just didn't have the discipline for it.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting to see how this stuff really like got into a deep part of my consciousness, led me to do things in real life. And I think had I had something like this, where people that I respected were breaking it down and explaining to me how to use it, were also giving me other elements like discipline and how to think and build a mindset, that it might have turned out very different. All right, we have a question from the audience, which is not
actually it's
on
a
screen.
Question.
Okay, but we put the red light on. The red light means question.
All right.
Is it all a big lie?
No, it's a giveaway question.
All right, here we go. So, giveaway question. What day and year did Marty McFly go back in time to? What day and question? Wow. What day and year did Marty McFly go back in time to? So can you end a sentence with two?
No, that's a preposition. So that's you can't end a sentence with a preposition.
But we hopefully understand. He sets the clock and goes to a particular date. What date is it? What date is it? All right. Oh, look at that. We have.
Well,
is this?
This is one of my films, I guess.
There
yeah,
it is.
Let's move on to this film, Back to the Future. Let me tell you about Back to the Future. That is my favorite film of all time.
That's
right. I mean, people always pose the question, "What's your favorite film of all time?" And if you ask most people will always say, like, "Oh my God, it's a tough one."
Won't most people
Don't let me
just
choose.
flat say, I can't choose?
People always say that. I'm like, what do you mean you can't choose? There's gotta be one.
100%.
Yes. And this one stands out for me. Now, I was already in full gear with going to the movies and enjoying the experience. When this film came out, let me tell you, it blew my mind. I was already in love with the narrative of time travel already.
Yes.
I had seen The Time Machine and any other time travel.
You saw The Time Machine? That's a movie?
No, Time Machine? Yeah, they have a movie version. Yeah.
The H.G. Wells?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They got a movie version. Yeah.
Wow, I don't think I've ever seen that.
There's two now. They even
I knew they redid it recently.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, it was fantastic. And I loved it at the time. I loved it. But then this came along, and it gave this feeling of, it made it relative. And to me, it was brilliant because it took the the popular notion of time traveling and made it very relative, because all the other previous time traveling stories were about how you can affect the world, the butterfly effect, or how you can just go get from A to B and get back to A. But this movie, not only was the main character, Marty McFly, was his life affected by going back in time, he runs dead smack into his parents, his mom. And that's not his mom, that's Doc Brown. But there's his mom, yes. So he runs into his mom. And not only does he run into his mom falls in love with him. And not only does his mom fall in love with him, his existence will never happen if he can't keep his mom from falling in love with him, because he has to get his father to take her to the dance. But he can't get his father to take her to the dance because his father is a wimp and he doesn't even want to ask her out. And he's getting bullied by Biff and so on. So there's so many themes in there. First of all, I'm getting into filmmaking theory now, but just there are so many themes there that I absolutely love. The theme of continuity. The continuity in this film is superb. If you ever get a chance to break down the continuity, take a look. So many minor details in the film.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, man. God.
I'm not even sure some people know what you mean by continuity.
Okay, well, I mean, for people who are not watching, continuity, it's basically streamlining the script and making sure everything is in place. Nothing is out of sorts. You don't look back and think like, okay, how could that have happened? You know what I mean? But instead, continuity connects the dots. And it connects the dots so finely.
What's the name of the guy that he says, oh, you should run for mayor one day, or you're mayor?
Goggins Wilson.
Isn't he like... in the present day, it drives by and he's campaigning or something.
Such a minor detail. You just hear, you hear the call and the horns, and this car goes by, and you just see almost like a flyer, a poster on the side of a car, Mary Goldie Wilson, and then this woman says something about the election. Then they go back, and he sees this guy is sweeping the floor, and he sees him, and he goes, "That's right, you're gonna run for mayor," and he goes, "Mayor." I'm going to run for mayor. I mean, it's stuff like that. But but little minor details, they just go on and on. But just the story itself about, again, it goes back to overcoming fear, how Marty teaches his dad to overcome fear. Of course, the typical rite of passage is your father teaches you how to overcome fear, or how to be a man, so to speak. But in this case, the son is doing it to the father. And they're peers in this stage because they're the same age. And that element to me just blew my mind. So it managed to be a movie about time travel, but they created this just amazing story of family and belonging and overcoming the bully. If you can see, there's a big theme of overcoming the bully in all my movies. I really think all my movies involve a bully. But I can go on and on. But before I go too far, I wanted to get your take on Back to the Future.
One, I love the movie and definitely think that there's some incredible themes of empowerment with, like you said, the father learning to stand up for himself. And to what you alluded to earlier, the reason I think that's so powerful in this movie is that it has a massive knock-on effect. So normally in a movie, you don't, as a screenwriter, you can't really take the time to show how that echoes. But this, without having to, belabor the point, you get to see that in learning to stand up for himself, his entire world reverses. And by gaining confidence and having that moment of standing down the bully, that now he's in just a dramatically different position emotionally, financially, like everything. So, yeah, I love that.
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm going to move on from this movie because there's so many other movies I want to get to, and I know there are movies you want to get to. Yeah. So I'm actually going to skip by this, even though it's my favorite of all time. Curious to see what your next film is. All
right. Why don't we, just for ease, you guys can pull up, I guess the one that you tried to put up was Rad, so why don't we go with Rad?
Rad.
Yes. So for those that don't know, while we get that answer, before we play the clip, Rad is a movie about BMX bikes, and I was obsessed as a kid with two things, ninjas and BMX.
I was just going to say, if you were a boy in the 80s, you loved two things, ninjas and BMX.
Oh, for sure. And this movie, if I'm not mistaken, the director was like Hal Needham, and he had done like a bunch of like big sort of landmark movies. So for him to turn his attention to BMX, I think probably at the time was a little like, what the hell is he doing? It did not do well at the box office, but ends up getting this massive cult following in VHS. It had really pretty universal appeal. The reason I've seen this movie so many times is it was the only movie that my sister and I could agree on. So when we were at the video store and there wasn't something new out that, you know, everybody wanted to see because we hadn't seen it, the one thing that we had seen that we could agree on was Rad. And so this led to me really getting into not BMX, because technically I was into freestyle, which
my
is
brother was into
highly featured in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Scary. What are you, nuts?
You over-rotated.
No shit.
All right. I spent over an hour trying to find like that whole sequence because this is a sequence that really stuck with me. And the reason that this sequence stuck with me so much is it's the one where he's learning to do the backflip, which now with the X Games and stuff doesn't seem like that impressive. Back then, it was like, what the fuck? He did a backflip? Yeah, like that. It seems so impossible to see him practice because everything else in the movie he's already good at.
Yep.
So you come into the movie and he's good, he's good, he's good. It's just that nobody believes in him. So now he has to prove how good he is. But then you get into the middle part of the movie and it gets to the point where now to win, he's got to like up his game. And that's where it really got me, is when you get, not only are they the underdog, but they have to do something to become the worthy underdog. And that is a fucking theme. Like if that isn't a theme that people recognize in my life, this obsession with gaining skills, getting better at something, practice, being able to improve, like that is... like, this is my jam. And so this was one of those things that when I realized, okay, I've failed as a filmmaker because I see myself as being either inherently talented or not, this is one of those things that, like, comes back, right?
Yep.
And it's like, wait, like, Crew. And to show you how obsessed I was with this movie, so the lead character's name is Crew. I have no idea why. But CRU, and when I thought I was going to have kids, I was naming my son Crew. That was like, that's the degree to which I was obsessed with this. And literally at one point, that was the first name that I threw out to Lisa, and she shut it down.
Oh,
she shut it down. But like my whole life, I thought I was going to name my son Crew. That's how into this movie I was.
Man, I used to set up a ramp and try to jump my BMX all the time. And I would think I would get so high off the ground, but it was probably just 2 feet off the ground. I couldn't get up there. I didn't know how to hike my bike up once I got off the air. It was just terrible. It was absolutely terrible.
Yep.
But man, that's a great choice.
Yeah, it was a big movie. And so this clip is, you see him practicing and getting hurt. Like he's doing it over and over. So at first he under rotates and then he over rotates. Right. And that line is, you know, one of the most famous lines. And I showed that to my wife and she was like, no shit is one of the most famous lines in the movie. I said, well, in context, the first thing you over rotated, and then he goes, no shit. So yeah, amazing to see that practice.
And rad is short for radical, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that people actually used to say that?
Dude, all the time.
Yeah, that's radical. It's just crazy.
Oh, and I would say even more people said rad. Dude, that's rad.
Exactly,
that's so rad.
That's so rad.
I still say that.
The funny thing is, people still say rad, but I wonder if radical is ever going to come back. Like the full. Right. I wonder if that'll make it come back. I bet it does. Actually, secretly, I'm going on record and saying it's going to come back.
You planting that flag?
Yeah, I'm going to try to bring it back.
Nice. All right, what's the next radical
for me,
I'm
gonna skip 2 if it's not next on my original list. It's gonna be a 1-2 punch, so to speak. I could not get through this list without mentioning Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. Okay. There is no way I can get through a list about 80s films without talking about Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. Rocky 3 to me was...
That's the one... It's not Mr... Is Mr. T 2 or 3?
That's
He's
3.
3. Okay.
Clubber Lang. Man, there's so many things about that film. First of all, Clubber Lang terrified me. It's
Mr. T for you.
Oh my God, Mr. T. Those of you who know Mr. T, of course, he was in the A-Team.
That's true. Yes. Some people in this feed may not even know who Mr. T is.
Yeah, they're like, exactly. Who's this Mr. T you speak of? But yes, he terrified me with his mohawk, and he was a mean opponent because, of course, Apollo Creed before, he was debonair and he was joking, and there was a bit of finesse to him. But Clubber Lang was just pure anger. Didn't even have a training squad. He just trained himself. But there's so many elements about that film. I guess the first one I'll get to with Rocky 3 is losing your way and finding your way back. So those of you who don't know the story of Rocky, going back to Rocky 1 and 2, which those films are in the 70s. On a little side note, the first Rocky came out the day I was born.
Really?
It premiered the day I was born.
Whoa.
The first Rocky came out November 21st, 1976.
Wow.
Yeah. And just another thing I'm going to throw in, I love that we have this shared love for 80s films because we're both bicentennial babies. Tom and I were both born in 1976. So I guess we were right at the prime age of loving these movies in the 80s.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, in Rocky 3, oh man, the race. I was challenging everyone to a race after this scene. But Rocky lost his way because he was an underdog in the first Rocky. And he got his shot at the title. And he doesn't win. Apollo beats him, but he goes the distance, so to speak. Even the theme song is going the distance.
Such an awesome choice for a mainstream Hollywood film.
Yes.
Can you believe? He doesn't win, dude.
Yeah.
He loses in the end. It's pretty crazy.
He loses in the end, but he goes the distance. And of course, in the second one, he gets a rematch with Apollo Creed. Everyone around Apollo says, do not fight this guy again because I saw a beast in the ring. He will kill you. And of course, Rocky wins in the second one. So Rocky becomes the heavyweight champion. The underdog, through 2 movies, becomes the heavyweight champion. So we begin Rocky 3 with showing that this guy's not only a champion, he's just slaughtering all his opponents. And not only is he slaughtering all his opponents, he's rich now. He has the big house. He has the nice car.
The robot. Remember his son as a robot.
Yeah.
That like really hit me. I was like, oh my God.
Like everything is going well for him. He's on a motorcycle, you know what I mean? And Eye of the Tiger by Survivor is playing. Until this day, that song pumps me up.
Dude, such a good song.
Yeah, but he loses his way. That's Rocky 4, which I'll get to in a second, but he loses his way, but he has to get back. And he loses to Clubber Lang. Clubber Lang knocks him out, and then Mickey admits to him, look, everyone you've been fighting, I wanted to keep you safe in the ring. Fighters get busted up in the ring. There's no longevity to it. You've been fighting losers for the most part. You're finally fighting a worthy opponent, and you lose. So he has to get that strength back. And there's a scene on the beach after the first race with Apollo. Apollo is running, and then Rocky's slow, and then Apollo's like, man, what's wrong with you, man? What's wrong with you? Get your head in the game. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. And I remember one time my friend Rosenbaum and I were sitting in his trailer watching up in Vancouver. I was visiting him on set, and he had to do a scene afterwards, and they were going to come and get him, whoever comes and get the actors. I don't know who does that. And we just were playing football with the extras. So I had taken a shower, and then he had taken a shower, not together. And, and we're sitting in the trailer, wet, and in our towels watching the scene of Rocky telling Adrian that he's afraid. I'm afraid. Is that what you want to hear? Because she's saying, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you practicing? Why can't you get your head in the game? And he goes, I'm afraid, all right? Is that what you want to hear? I'm afraid. And we were like, crying in our towels. And then they came to get him on set. And we're just sitting there bawling our eyes out. And it was, that scene always resonated with me, but it was the first time that it hit me so hard. Here's this grown man, this grown-ass man admitting to his wife that he's afraid. And I remember at that moment, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait till I'm married, and I can't wait till I'm able to talk about my fears with my wife.
Whoa.
That moment, I was like, I cannot wait to just drop that masculinity and talk about my fears with my wife. Again, I'm a crier. I'm a born crier. And it's like, my wife knows that. And I'm glad that I can open myself up. And that scene is just like, for anyone who knows that scene, I know you know it, look at it a different way and understand you can drop the masculinity. You can drop it. So
you just went way deeper than I was expecting.
I'm
That's
telling you,
legit.
that whole movie, but that scene for sure. And the shorts, everything about it I love. So yeah, and then Rocky 4, same deal. Like Apollo gets killed and he has to fight an even scarier opponent. Someone who kills your friend in the ring. And just to save face, it's the height of the Cold War. Of course, as Americans, God, there's so many things in films. There was like, oh, we're Americans, we got to fight the Russians, and they did it with Rocky 4. But hey, that's what marketing is, But it worked for me at the time. I was living in Japan when Rocky 4 came out, and there was always the threat of the Cold War. We were in striking distance because I was on military bases in Japan. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to kill us. How do we get back at them? We beat Ivan Drago. And I'm telling you, I just loved everything about it. Like, so a guy who kills your friend, you have to go in the ring and take him on. And it's just, there's so much might behind that.
I have not mild obsession with revenge films. And this is something that I have to reconcile with impact theory. And I've thought, like, how do we handle this? Do we literally bifurcate our company into the 80-20 rule? So 80% of it is beautiful, things you're moving towards, grateful, all that. And then we literally make 20% movies that are like revenge oriented. I don't know, man. I actually don't have the answer.
Yeah.
But I would be lying if I said that like revenge was not a thing for me. It is very much a thing for me. And revenge is at the heart of and we'll talk about it after this, but revenge is at the heart of one of the films that I'm going to talk about. And it was secretly at the heart of No Retreat, No Surrender, and I didn't bring it up. So No Retreat, No Surrender, he kills his brother, right?
Yep.
And so he goes crazy. My favorite setup to a Steven Seagal film is Hard to Kill, where they kill his whole family.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie is
Payback like a mofo.
Dude, it resonates, man. It resonates. And I don't know what you do with that, because I want to give people a certain feeling at the end of our content, right? You have to feel a certain way, the most empowering place on earth. So I don't know. I don't know if there's room for darkness in that. So I really have to fucking think through that. But God, revenge, like, it does it for me, man.
I love a revenge film.
I'm with you.
I love a revenge
and
film.
Rocky IV was on my list.
Okay.
I can't remember. I think, in fact, I'll just ask if I can get a yes or no from whoever's hooked up to walkie-talkie. Did a Rocky IV clip make it into my thing? I don't think it did. I think it was too hard to find like a single moment.
Okay.
So the only thing you could really do is play the montage where he's working out and you juxtapose like the high tech with the low tech.
And the Casio.
Yeah. But this movie was one of those like hyper impactful movies for me. Man. Why is this one so big for you?
I'm telling you, just I mean, so many elements, so many elements. Again, I mean, it's pushing yourself. Revenge, yes, because we all love a good revenge film, and just pushing yourself. You know what I mean? And getting creative, so to speak. Because he gets to Russia, and of course, they don't give him the facilities to work out in. He's used to working out in these great facilities. Again, Rocky's become rich, and he has access to the facilities to work out. But he gets there, and they put him in a cabin in the snow. And he has to get creative and say, okay, I'm going to take this guy on. I'm just going to have to work out as rugged as I can. It was the Tough Mudder before Tough Mudder.
Right.
Rocky is running through the snow, while the KGB, for some reason, is following him in the car. And he's like, you know, I'm going to take up the mountain and run through snow. I'm going to go in a barn and friggin' hang from some type of slat and do sit-ups like this while someone is smacking my stomach. I mean, he just went rugged. And I remember, like, I was already into fitness. I was already into, you know, feeling good, not actually looking good because I wasn't trying too hard. But after seeing Rocky IV and seeing him rugged, you know, I just remember thinking, I can create a home gym. And to this day, you know, anyone who knows me knows that I do not mess with gyms. I do not. I'm a germaphobe. So you wouldn't catch me dead. If you saw me in a gym, just know it's a body snatch.
You've been body snatched. We have like at Impact Theory, we have like a whole list of things. If you see Dr. Finesse doing, he has officially been body snatched. Yes. Being in the gym is one of them.
Sports bars.
Sports bars, another. But you love sports. That's
I love
the irony.
sports, but I don't like sports bars.
Yeah,
but yeah, maybe it's a germ thing. But to this day, everything I do when I work out is in my home. I do a home gym. One of my friends always laughs about my home gym. So it just taught me discipline too, with just working out and being rugged. How about you?
So what I love about this is the DIY attitude, where it's like he's got the super high tech. And so put me in context, right? I'm a kid from Tacoma. I don't have access to all this cool stuff. I fantasize about being a part of a big city. I am in absolute terror of the Cold War. And for kids today, I don't think they realize, dude, in the 80s, that shit was terrifying. And I remember, thankfully, that the only thing that gave me any solace, and this is kind of scary, the only thing that gave me any solace was the notion of mutually assured destruction. Yeah. And so that concept resonated with me. I thought, well, we've got the time, right, while their missiles are coming to fire back. Yeah. And here's another one that I had on my list that I just couldn't find that clip that really explained why.
Guess?
Yeah.
Red Dawn?
No.
Oh, okay.
But fuck, you're so right. Okay. But that one back then scared the life out of me. So it was the only movie ever that I had to leave. So we were watching it on VHS, and it reminded me to come back to what it was. So watching it on VHS, and probably about 20 minutes into the movie, everyone's getting slaughtered in like this just town, right? They just show up. You're sitting in class, and they start paratroopering.
And
down.
wasn't the
They're
town
just
in
getting slaughtered.
Washington?
No, but it looked like Washington.
Okay.
How about, maybe it was. I don't know. I didn't stay long enough to find out. I don't think so, though. And everyone's just getting slaughtered. And my dad looks over at me and sees the look of like horror on my face. And he was like, you can leave if you need to. All right, without further ado, because I know we're a little bit over time, Dr. Finesse, thank you so much for joining us. It was amazing to have you on.
Oh my God,
for
this
sharing
was so much
movies.
fun.
Incredible.
I'm looking forward to Impact Entertainment, ENT, aka whatever else title we.
Yeah, we're gonna come up with a better name for that. So please let us know what you think we should be calling that. All right, thank you, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Absolutely, thank you.